President Trump knew the protesters were heavily armed on January 6th. Security officials told him exactly that they had guns, knives, and spears. Yet knowing that, the former president still told the angry mob of his supporters to march onto the Capitol. And when his plans to join them were rebuffed, he got physical with his own security service. That in stunning testimony from a top aide to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Cassidy Hutchinson testified in front of the House January 6th committee today. She said she had significant access to the West Wing and to conversations, meetings, and calls of White House officials. She said days before January 6th, her boss and others knew about the risk of violence. She described her first inkling that January 6th could be bad. It was January 2nd, just days before the insurrection. She said Rudy Giuliani told her that the 6th was going to be a great day and that the president was going to the Capitol.
I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, I had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. It sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol. He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, there's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real bad on January 6th.
Hutchinson revealed Giuliani later dropped names of some of the extremist groups who would eventually attack the Capitol.
I recall hearing the word Oath Keeper and hearing the word Proud Boys closer to the planning of the January 6th rally when Mr. Giuliani would be around.
She also testified President Trump ordered Meadows to meet with General Michael Flynn, who admitted he lied to the FBI, and the self-proclaimed dirty trickster Roger Stone the day before the insurrection. They'd set up a sort of war room at the Willard Hotel in D.C. Roger Stone is known to have had ties with the Oath Keepers. The committee reports the group provided him security on the 6th. Meadows had asked Hutchinson to start planning for him to meet with them at the hotel.
I had made it clear to Mr. Meadows that I didn't believe it was a smart idea for him to go to the Willard Hotel that night. I wasn't sure everything that was going on at the Willard Hotel, although I knew enough about what Mr. Giuliani and his associates were pushing during this period. I didn't think that it was something appropriate for the White House Chief of Staff to attend or to consider involvement in. And
in the end, she said he didn't go, but said he would call into their meeting instead. On the morning of January 6th, Hutchinson says another White House aide warned her boss, Mark Meadows, the protesters were carrying weapons.
I recall Tony and I having a conversation with Mark probably around 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m., where I remember Tony mentioning knives, guns in the form of pistols and rifles, bear spray, body armor, spears, and flagpoles. Spears were one item, flagpoles were one item, and then Tony had relayed to me something to the effect of, and these effing people are fastening spears onto the ends of flagpoles.
Hutchinson testified Mark Meadows received other warnings before that as well.
So at the time, in the days leading up to the 6th, there were lots of public reports about how things might go bad on the 6th, even the potential for violence. If I'm hearing you correctly, what stands out to you is that Mr. Meadows did not share those concerns, or at least did not act on those concerns?
Did not act on those concerns would be accurate.
Hutchinson went to the Ellipse on January the 6th, where President Trump was giving his rally speech. She said she was behind the stage with the president, other White House officials, and Trump family members. She described metal detectors, or mags as she called them, around the perimeter of the event, standard practice for a presidential event. She said security officials told them a lot of the president's supporters weren't entering the Ellipse because they didn't want to give up their weapons. Hutchinson testified that made President Trump furious.
He wanted the arena that we had on the Ellipse to be maxed out at capacity for all attendees. The advance team had relayed to him that the mags were free-flowing. Everybody who wanted to come in had already come in, but he still was angry about the extra space and wanted more people to come in.
And she testified she heard President Trump say just ahead of that speech, he didn't care if they had weapons. Let them in.
I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, you know, I don't effing care that they have weapons. they're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
Hutchinson also testified that throughout the day on January 6th, the president believed he would be going to the Capitol with the protesters after the speech, just as he said. But in the days leading up to the riot, the White House legal team adamantly advised against that. The morning of the 6th, here's what Hutchinson says the White House counsel Pat Cipollone told her.
Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable if we make that movement happen.
And do you remember which crimes Mr. Cipollone was concerned with?
In the days leading up to the 6th, we had conversations about potentially obstructing justice or defrauding the electoral count.
Every crime imaginable if we make that move happen. According to Hutchinson, the president still planned to go. Secret Service deemed it unsafe and decided they would take the president back to the White House instead. Hutchinson said when she got back to the White House, another top aide described President Trump's aggressive reaction toward Bobby Engel. He's the head of the president's protective detail.
The president said something to the effect of, I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now. To which Bobby responded, sir, we have to go back to the West Wing. The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol. Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
Hutchinson described the moment rioters were closing in on the Capitol. She said the White House counsel went straight to Mark Meadows, urging action.
And I remember Pat saying to him something to the effect of, the rioters have gotten to the Capitol, Mark. We need to go down and see the president now. And Mark looked up at him and said, he doesn't want to do anything, Pat. And Pat said something to the effect of, and very clearly had said this to Mark, something to the effect of, Mark, something needs to be done or people are going to die and the blood's going to be on your effing hands.
Today, Hutchinson also revealed that Rudy Giuliani and her boss, the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, were among those who asked for a presidential pardon in the aftermath of January the 6th.
Did Rudy Giuliani ever suggest that he was interested in receiving a presidential pardon related to January 6th?
He did.
And Ms. Hutchinson, did White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows ever indicate that he was interested in receiving a presidential pardon related to January 6th?
Mr. Meadows did seek that pardon. Yes, ma'am.
That is the closest look we've gotten into the inner workings of the White House on the day of the attack, the day the rioters breached the Capitol. CNBC senior congressional correspondent Ilan Moy now. Ilan, learning more about the push inside the White House for the president to call off the rioters.
Yes, Chef, there were three different camps who were trying to push the president in three very different directions on January 6th. Now, according to Hutchinson, one group was begging him to take action and call off those rioters. Another was more neutral. They wanted to condemn the violence, but knew that Trump wasn't going to do that right away. The third group she called deflect and blame. Hutchinson put her old boss, Mark Meadows, in that last category, even though he did end up in a more neutral posture. Now, publicly, we saw that fight play out with other officials, such as when Cabinet Secretaries Betsy DeVos and Elaine Chao eventually resigned. But it was also raging behind the scenes as top officials tried to convince Trump to talk to the American people the day after the attack on the Capitol.
I understand that he had a lot of opinions about what the context of that announcement were to entail. I had original drafts of the speech where there were several lines that didn't make it in there about prosecuting the rioters or calling them violent. He didn't want that in there. He wanted to put in there that he wanted to potentially pardon them.
Now, a pardon for the rioters. White House lawyers got that line removed from the statement. And Hutchinson told the committee one of the ways his advisors got Trump to do the video at all was to warn him that there was talk of using the 25th Amendment to remove him from office.
So the primary reason that I had heard, other than, we did not do enough on the 6th, we need to get a stronger message out there and condemn this, otherwise this will be your legacy. The secondary reason to that was, think about what might happen in the final 15 days of your presidency if we don't do this. There's already talks about invoking the 25th Amendment. You need this as cover.
Well, several potentially key witnesses have refused to provide testimony, including Mark Meadows. Today, the committee said others have provided sworn statements that they are feeling the pressure from Trump world.
As long as I continue to be a team player, they know I'm on the right team. I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting who I need to protect. I'll continue to stay in good graces in Trump world. He wants me to let you know he's thinking about you. He knows you're loyal, and you're going to do the right thing when you go in for your deposition.
Now, Shep Vice Chair Liz Cheney cautioned that trying to influence a witness to testify untruthfully presents very serious concerns.
Elon, what kind of response did we get from the former president himself?
Well, Shep, Trump lashed out at the committee and at Hutchinson while she was testifying. On his social media platform, Trump said he hardly knew Hutchinson and denied that he complained about the size of the crowd at his January 6th speech or that he attempted to remove the magnetometers. He also said that her description of him trying to grab the steering wheel of his SUV to go to the Capitol was fraudulent. Now, Trump did not directly respond to the accusation that he also lunged at the head of his protective detail, Bobby Engel, who was in the car with them. Now, Engel has already spoken to the committee, but Shep, tonight, a source close to the Secret Service tells NBC that he is willing to testify under oath that the events Hutchinson described in that SUV never happened.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.